Stephanie Diaz De Leon.
This is Nicholas Garton.
This is Omar Waheed.
And this is Rob Chappell.
And it's 365 Amplified. And look, I'm back in the room. I'm done being sick or out of town or whatever it was. It's been November was long and disrespectful in some ways for me.
November was horrible.
It was one of the longest months I think I've experienced this entire year.
It is the longest month, especially when you turn a whole year older and you start looking at all the white hairs that popped up in your beard, which weren't there 6 months ago.
Oh, this feels like a different level of harm that has happened to you.
And the 1 year anniversary of me totaling my car. So
the salt has entered Omar's salt and pepper beard.
Yes. I mean, it was salty for a little bit before.
Mine's almost entirely salt. So you're
6 months ago.
6 months, and you remember the day when it?
I progressively noticed it, and it's just more. It was a whole patch, and then now there's
just
some,
a little,
and it's spreading, and you grow older, and you slowly die.
Don't pull any out, because then they'll spread more.
Yeah, I was going to say
they do.
They do. Oh, that went quick. Yeah. Let's move into conversations here about some updates on some stories that we're all working on, right?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about what's happening in Sun Prairie, and there have been some developments, or we've learned more about actually what happened. Nick, can you catch us up?
Yeah, Renee Coleman, who was forced to resign from Sun Prairie East High School, she's continuing to maintain that she didn't say the things that the district is alleging that she said. In a report they released that I got my hands on, they are saying that she was engaged in some pretty bombastic banter during a staff convocation in August inside of a press box with about 9 employees. It's a little unclear. It seems like she was maybe in a press box with her specific employees, her secretaries, a couple staff, and they were loudly bantering potentially. And another staff member from sort of the next press box was complaining. And, since she's the principal and they're a lower employee, that confrontation probably didn't go great. And so now they are saying that she was saying all kinds of things. I don't know if they bear repeating on this platform.
We'll put them in the story. Will be up on Madison365.org, and we'll do more. But it's stuff that would be inappropriate if true, and but also, like you said, banter, right? Like that. If nothing really to the level of like racial slurs.
Certainly not. And it seems like Coleman is saying that she didn't say these things. Her supporters, or not supporters, but the other witnesses are saying that she did it. And it's interesting. There's 9 people in the press box that were interviewed by investigators. The investigators are saying that more than half of them are not credible.
What? What makes them not credible?
Well, one of the things that made Coleman not credible, according to the report, is that she did not face us during her interview, nor make eye contact.
Oh, no.
Was abrupt, and generally denied anything was said that was untoward.
Wait, so because she said, one, she didn't look them in the eye, or they didn't catch it, or didn't feel like she was looking, again, like that's an interesting assessment to assume that she must be lying because she didn't look me in the eye, because she said she didn't say anything, and what was the other one? Didn't, like the first one?
Well, that
she didn't face them.
She didn't even face them during
looking off to the side.
Sit up straight and look them in the eye during this interview.
Oh my gosh! Everyone stop watching Law and Order. Like that is not the way that we.
Old cowboy Republicans. Look me in my eyes.
I'm sorry. That's not. It's not law. It's one. She was, from what I understand, they were interviewing her to understand what was happening. Yes, they were investigating, but it was not like a criminal investigation in such a way that we are trying to put her in a box and I don't know, interrogate her. Right? This is an interview. This is a conversation to understand what happened from her perspective and her view. Right? To assess the reason that she must be lying. Because again, she didn't look them in the eye, didn't look in their face, according to them, according to their assessment. Like how, like what do you, like again, stop watching SVU, like, or Law and Order marathons over the holidays. Like that's not how it works, y'all.
Now Coleman says that the employees the investigative report find credible are all 4 white males, and that the rest of the people that were denied credibility are all women, some of whom are women of color. So there were 9 people in the box, 5 women, 4 men, and the 4 men are credible, the 5 women are not, and this is borne out in the report.
How is that not probable? How does no one say?
Sounds phenomenally sexist.
Yeah. Okay.
It also should be noted that the 5 women who the report doesn't say there are women or men. It just says employee A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But Renee is telling us this, that there's 4 white men and 5 women. But it sounds like the 5 women were all also engaged in the banter, quote unquote. And so I think part of what they're saying is because they didn't want to get in trouble either, so they all just denied it.
Or because their story sounded too similar or too much the same. It must be a lie. They must have all like talked to each other about how to respond to this, and the story sounded too similar. So it must. And again, not the basis for what
their story was. No, nothing was said.
That sounds too similar.
They're all making this all up. And the other thing about the report is like they said there's no evidence of any motivation to make this up.
Well, is there ever? For me doesn't even carry the day. I think it doesn't even matter if they said the stuff or not. I think that if she was a beloved principal who the community was really behind and the superintendent loved and everybody loved and was into having be principal, they would have sat down with her and the 5 employees, and we would have had a conversation about, hey, I was at convocation, heard you were kind of talking crazy in the press box. What happened? Because I think all of us who have worked somewhere where we were a valued employee know the difference between how that would be handled in that situation versus this circumstance where they were like, we received a complaint and we went right to firing her.
Right. The investigation happened. It was an outside investigator, right, who like interviewed all these folks, and the result was, well, it was first reassignment, which is allowed in her contract, and then it was resignation. So they didn't actually fire, but they did go through this process. Yeah. Where they effectively fired her without actually.
It looks better for you if you resign rather than have us like fire you.
Right. And then the termination agreement or the resignation agreement was that she wouldn't talk, but then she talked to you, and now they're not going to pay her the rest of and she's saying that they're refusing to pay the rest of what they said they would.
Yes, they retaliated against her for speaking to Madison 365, which is part of the resignation agreement, was that
she wouldn't talk.
Basically, that she wouldn't say anything disparaging. I mean, we could quibble about what she said that was disparaging in our coverage, but
yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. It didn't say she wouldn't talk at all. She
just wasn't allowed to disparage.
Yeah, so saying her version of the facts, they viewed as disparaging.
Even though so is her version of the facts backed by the report? Like, is she always
No, but in the report, it does show that the district believes that she said she couldn't be fired because she's Black. And I asked her about that, and she said no Black person in America would ever say that.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, any person of color in any space of whiteness and in any space of power absolutely believes that there's no way for them to be fired.
Always the first to go.
I mean, no matter how well we do at 1,000%. And absolutely, if she was, I don't even know if she had to be beloved, but if she, I wonder, based on previous reporting that folks have done within this district, is if she had been white, would this have been a different conversation, right? Would there have been, like, I don't even know that if she was white and beloved, or just white and controversial, I think it would have been a different conversation still. There would have been a different method for which this would have been discussed in this community, in this space, and within this district.
Yeah, I have to think that if given what was allegedly said, which was, like I said, inappropriate, but if it was a group of white administrators, women, dropping racial slurs, probably would not have survived that. If it got reported, in the media,
then it would have. So, like, here's the thing, and even then, it would be the interpretation of what a slur is. It would have been played a game of, well, is that a slur? Like, we would have jumped through hoops to help mitigate the harm as much as we could, even though, like, no, racial slur is a racial slur, y'all. But folks would have played a mental game of, let's define a slur before moving
due process would have gone a whole lot different,
a lot longer. Yeah, exactly right. And that we've seen that play out when we have reported on some incidents like that. That there are hearings and there are restorative practices.
And the word that we use, like we must show empathy, not just for the victims, but the person doing the harm and what they may have, right? Like, but also, all those words would have been part of that conversation.
But that is not what happened here. There were no racial slurs. There were words that are sometimes talked about, the R word. Let's just say that was one of the words she used.
It's a harmful word.
Harmful.
It's a harmful word that is often like used without thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. And not appropriate in the setting that you're in, and in any setting. Right.
But had a white person or a group of white administrators use that, you have to think there would have been a restorative process or like a talking to.
Yeah.
Groups of white administrators have used that language, and the difference here is that they were not speaking loudly in person of color tones of voices at the press box, maybe. And I have overheard white board members or administrators saying awfully sexist and racially questionable things in my career. So I can verify that.
Yeah. Now, the other part, there's a second report, which is about, as we mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, the misgendering of a teacher. And we've learned a little bit more about that.
We have. I spoke with Renee about that. She shared with me some of the parts of the investigative process. It was her interview with an investigator. And at the heart of the matter for the misgendering was that a teacher at Sun Prairie East had complained to another employee, who that person was the one who complained to HR that she was repeatedly misgendering this teacher. The teacher said that they wanted to be referred to as Teacher Arlo and not by their first or last name. Renee Coleman is saying that was a change from what it was when she first met the teacher. She was in the interviewing process when they hired the teacher, and the teacher said they wanted to be referred to as Dylan. She said that later the teacher wanted to be referred to as Mr. Arlo, and that later than that wanted to be referred to as Teacher Arlo.
Right.
Now, the school district on its website lists the teacher as Dylan Whitty. And during the investigative interview that she had with the outside law firm, even the investigator referred to Teacher Arlo as he, him, after a while, several times. So the teacher is in a he, him, by their given name designation according to the school's roster of employees. And so hasn't complained about that. I don't know what that process would even be, but I think it's interesting. And all of this came out after she confronted the teacher about having a student in their classroom who was not a student at East at all, but was the girlfriend of some students. And the teacher rather, had that student in their classroom. So
now the according to the report, there were several instances where Renee Coleman had to be corrected on pronouns and on referring to by the name or whatever, and she's maintaining that it was entirely unintentional the whole time.
100%. She's saying that as soon as the teacher told her what the teacher's preference was for pronouns, she immediately, like in her mind at least, was like, okay, that's how I'll refer to them, and made every effort to do that, but was imperfect with it to her own admission. So on a technicality, if I was like, I want to be referred to as Reporter Nicholas, and you just call me something else, you've known me since 2017, I would understand that was just like a slip up on your part. I don't think that you would get fired for that.
Right. That's the other thing. Is that a firing offense, especially when this district itself misidentifies this teacher on its staff roster, and you still right now, just today, it's still on there as the name that they don't want to use.
Correct.
Right. And so how is this principal getting fired for that is the question. And again, it is perfectly appropriate for any person who identifies as non-binary to request to be referred to in a certain way and to complain when they're not. The question is, if this principal was white and was doing that, would there have been any complaint at all? And would that be a firing offense, or would there have been some sort of restorative process?
I think it is clear that there's an element to this that we're missing. And I have reached out to the district to even offer off the record commentary about what that missing piece is, because it just feels like someone just wanted her to go. And these are things that they could use. The press box incident probably wasn't enough by itself. And so now we've got the misgendering thing going to sort of try to combine these things. She and I had a conversation about how it is appropriate for someone to be called what they want to be called. And she said that every teacher and student is called by whatever they want to be called. She, however, did not believe that as a Black woman, she should be the face of discrimination and inequity in Sun Prairie Area School District, which has a robust history. I mean, it's not even a history, because they're still doing it.
Right.
That has been, fully covered here of these racist antics that continue.
Well, that's the thing. Like in a vacuum, like on its own, you could kind of side eye at this whole thing, but in the context of everything that we've reported in the past 4 or 5 years out of Sun Prairie, like it all adds up, and it's clear that this is a school district that has racial issues. Right.
There's a lot of learning in so many different ways for them to need to do and reckon with, and also and the thing is, I think they're trying to show this only exists case by case, right? Like this is all siloed. These are all siloed incidents, and it's not. You have to sit it through and acknowledge your history, good and bad, and make steps to improve and do better, right? But when you silo these things, then it's easy, so easy to just sort of stay where you are and not move forward and do better for not just for your school and your staff and your administrative staff, but for those students and those parents in that community, right? This is a long lasting impact that and maybe they don't recognize it and they can't see it just yet because you're in the middle of it. But this is legacy, y'all. This is going to have an impact on future generations of communities, folks, and students who become parents, become taxpayers, and people, and the way that they vote and stuff. It's going to have an impact. It's going to show up, and it's going to show up in your hiring. It's going to show up in your retention. It's going to show up in your support, and in the way people feel about you is going to show up. It always does. It may not feel immediate. I don't have to think about it now. I'm it's going to show up later. Don't worry about it. streets are always going to make it right, whether you like it or not.
Now, the other layer of this is that 2 of the 3 Black members of the school board have resigned.
Yeah. And in like,
in the
what,
past
2 months, 2 weeks? 2 weeks, yeah.
Alwyn Foster, in the immediate aftermath of Renee Coleman's resignation, and then Lisa Goldsberry earlier this week, who did not cite Renee Coleman specifically, but she resigned from the school board. And she cited basically 3 things. Number one, that when
from a social media post, right?
This
like
is a Facebook post. I haven't talked to her. Nick reached out to her, but we're putting this from a Facebook post, and I'm going to try to do some more reporting on this because
there's a lot.
There's a lot here. But what she's saying, again, grain of salt, is what she's saying, is that number one, the school board technically has the authority to hire and fire people, and that when somebody gets fired, they have the right to appeal. But the school board can either choose to hear the appeal or not. Yeah. And the school board never hears the appeals. She always votes in favor of hearing an appeal because, like, why not? Yeah. And the rest of the board always votes no. Interesting. Yeah. It says Renee wasn't fired technically, like that doesn't come into account, but like it's just a transparency issue for her. Yeah. The second thing is Alwyn Foster resigned, leaving a vacancy, which is filled by appointment, not by special election. Okay. She's alleging that 2 members of the leadership of the school board called another community member and said, hey, if you apply, we're going to appoint you.
Oh, no, don't do that.
And that community member verified that with Lisa. So I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, that's a problem. Don't do that.
Yeah. And thirdly, and this is maybe the big one, it has been proposed. I don't think this has been adopted yet, but it's been proposed that the school board do away with the policy that says any purchase over $250,000 has to be approved by the board.
Why?
Because
why?
Because
schools are in service to the community. School boards are that voice.
Well, remember,
as best as it can be, of that community.
Right. So what they're saying is that this should all all those expenditures are already in the annual budget. So when we approve the annual budget, people can comment on that. But the problem is when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar budget, you're not going to.
And so many different items, including capital items. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's going to get lost.
Line items.
So that's a way.
But here's why. You're going to love why.
No, be careful.
The example.
I had coffee.
Now, do you guys remember a couple of months ago, Rodland did some reporting on that reading curriculum. Yep. That had the Native American questionable stuff.
Not questionable.
It was just racist about
there you go. Americans. Go right to it, Rod.
The school board does not approve curriculum. Right. They don't get down in the weeds on that. Yep. However, they do approve purchases. Yes. And because that was purchasing that curriculum would cost more than $250,000, the board had to approve it. And that brought it to light, and people
had questions and concerns about
objected to it. Yep. Including several teachers, and then we got and
community members.
And it got reported in the media.
Sure. Like it should have been.
That's
because it had impact of community. Wait.
That's the specific example that Lisa says was brought up, and when she asked, why do we need to? Why would we want to hide $250,000 purchases? Yeah. Purchases of that level. Well, for example, that whole curriculum thing. Meetings got contentious.
What? So things got hard? So things got hard? People had critical thinking skills and practiced them in the space that they're supposed to?
So they're explicitly saying we really should have had that curriculum. Just let the school purchase that curriculum.
It's not siloed.
Without
these are not siloed.
Without being debated at the board level.
No.
And without letting community people weigh in.
Why not?
Because it got contentious.
So what?
But so what? Like
things got hard?
This is how Trump got reelected.
But things got hard and you had to review and focus, and maybe you missed something. I'm not saying look, I'm not saying people's intent was to do harm, right? Like I am not assuming that you are all trying to bring in curriculum that does harm. But you missed something. Something rather vital and important that somebody else caught and brought to your attention, and
and they bought the curriculum anyway.
You still got what you wanted, but I will say, but then you also recognize we got to do more in this section and clean this up, right? Whatever the reasoning for why you bought it, at the very least, you all recognize we have to do extra work in this. That sucks, but but now that we see this, we have to fix it, right?
Yes.
You're telling me that now requires us, because that happened, we are going to take away the voice of our community because we had to do a little bit more work?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do the work. You have to do the work.
Well, let's be
if
honest.
you are talking about being anti-racist, if you are talking about being a more inclusive organization, if you are talking about creating belonging amongst your students, your staff, your peers, anybody else you want to bring, you got to do the work. And this is part of the darn work.
Let's be honest. I'm not sure that they want to avoid the work. It's just
they absolutely want to avoid the work.
Well, they do.
Absolutely want to avoid the work.
They also don't want it they're embarrassed.
Why would you be? Look,
because we reported on it.
Because it's hard.
Don't like that.
So okay, so look, put your ego away. This is not about you and your ego. It's about doing right by your community.
Yeah.
It's about doing right by those students. It's about doing right by your legacy. Right? And sometimes you do it wrong. And so you know what? We're going to be a model about how we do it right, how we make it better, and we do right, and we do less harm. And maybe that doesn't get reported on, but that doesn't matter because the community feels it. They see us trying to do right, and that's enough for us.
Yep.
So you got absolutely, sometimes the only thing that we focus on is doing the harm like that we've done, right? And sometimes not always the ways that we make things right. This is not making it right, y'all. This is not how you make things right. This is how you make things harder. This is how you make your community not feel like they're engaged with you, like and they make you feel like you're hiding something, and then they don't trust you. What is this mess?
Right. So we should be clear. This was a proposal that Lisa heard about.
Okay, well, put that away. Put no more proposal.
I don't know how far it's gone. I'm going to find out. I'm going to talk to the folks.
Well, and see, here's the thing: is the fact that we're talking about it now. Y'all have done something where we are coming back to it, and you might feel embarrassed again.
Yeah, I hope you do, because here's the thing. Okay, I'm gonna put in a quick fundraising plug here because this is what happens.
Yeah.
Elected officials act differently when they know they're being observed and watched. Right. And
there are two ways they can do. Like they can act better.
Yep.
Or they can act worse.
Or they can hide.
Yeah.
Which is what they're trying to do. Like, so rather than acting better, the school board or somebody on the school board wants to just hide instead. And that you can't do that. Governments do not get to act in secret. And technically speaking, they're like, well, it wouldn't be secret. It would still be in the budget. But you know nobody's paying attention to every line item in the
Well, you're also trying to convolute that process into in only one area. And here's the thing: you can't silo your decisions; they all have impact.
Yeah,
you can't pretend this one thing is not going to impact the other thing, or isn't like this ball of momentum of harm that you can continue to do.
And it's also true that nobody would know much about what's happening in Sun Prairie except that we've been reporting on it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Renee talked to Nick and nobody else, right? There was no other press on the Native American problematic curriculum.
Yeah.
On the couple of years ago, in how would you punish this slave lesson? Nobody else was reporting that. And then when they lied about hiring YWCA, I was able to debunk that lie in the moment immediately during the board meeting
with Vanessa. Oh, it was.
This is what happens when you have a media outlet like us that is connected to the community. I'm sorry to
plug
so hard, but this is real. Like, I'm watching the school board meeting and they're saying we've hired YWCA to help us develop anti-racist practice. So I texted the CEO of YWCA, who texted me back, LOL. No, they're just straight up lied about it. And we were able, because we were on top of it, because we're connected that way, we were able to debunk that lie immediately. So if you want to support what we do, Madison365.org/donate. We're a nonprofit, you guys. We're doing this because it's important to do, not to make any money, but we do need help to do it. So
support us, and also don't support editing practices at other outlets where the news reporters who cover K-12 were probably in a room saying we need to cover these things, and editors were probably telling them no.
Hate thrown.
Oh. See, look, we don't practice this. We don't run a script for this. You all got some real reactions and or feelings today.
Yep.
Let's move on to our next thing.
Let's talk about arts.
Let's switch it up. Something a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
new to Madison, a new artist named Richard Lopez, who goes by Arlo, is a resident at Omega School. He's been here for roughly 3 months. He had some following where he's from, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he was recently. And he really just found his footing, but suddenly moved to be with his partner, who's a PhD student at UW-Madison. Nervousness obviously sweeps in after you finally figure out your footing in art, because that's very, very hard to find in the first place, and starting over again. Just 3 months of nervousness, but he found his way into the Latino art community, especially with Oscar Morales and Omega School and all the work he does there, and was given his first solo show. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You can go to Omega Schools to see it. I can describe the art. It's all charcoal work. It's very influenced in the moment about how he's feeling then. For example, he had for his residency a luncheon where he started a live drawing, and then actually finished that later in the evening at a reception. And I asked him about it. He was like, "Oh, nervous the whole time." That was the emotion. I was like, because he used to do live drawings in his previous residency in Harrisburg, but the vibe was different. It was kind of like a wine bar, upscale restaurant, artsy place combination thing. And he had a residency there, and people would just go up to him and say horrible things about his art. And it really just made him feel discouraged, but he hasn't done that since he's moved to Madison. So he said, the whole time I was nervous because I was thinking about that experience there. But that wasn't what happened here in Madison. He was a lot of support, a lot of love, a lot of interaction with people. And he even invited some people to say, "Hey, why don't you go scribble something and we can work this into the art?" So yeah, new artist. You should check him out. If you do want to go see all his work that's hanging up at Omega Schools, email Oscar Morales at om@omegaschools.org, and you can go there and see it. It is up until December 18th.
All right, so a couple more weeks. We should mention what Omega School, funded by Oscar Morales, is like sort of adult education, gives folks GEDs and HSCDs and other stuff like that, right? Which is really, it's been around for like 50 years now. Did they just celebrate 50 years recently? I think you may not know that.
I may not know. I know Oscar's been there for 30 years, but Omega School has been around a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's been really doing really great work in the community for a long time, and now uplifting Latino artists, which is great.
Yeah.
I think we'll take a break, and when we come back, Rodlin is going to join us and talk about what happened over at Willaby's, which you may have heard about, and we'll have some other stuff as well. Be right back.
Hey folks, it's Rob. We've been telling you for the past few weeks that it is news match time, which means every dollar you donate in support of local, independent, nonprofit media is tripled. Well, today, that is no longer true. Because Oakwood Village, which provides memory care, assisted living, rehabilitation for senior citizens in Madison, they wanted to support us. And more importantly, they wanted to inspire you to support Madison 365. So they are putting in another $1,000 to match the next $1,000 of your donations. That's right. Listen to this. Every dollar you give us, the next $1,000 gets matched 4 times. You give us $1, we get 4. You give us $25, we get 100. Because Oakwood Village believes in our mission, and they want you to as well. So go to madison365.org/donate. Again, madison365.org/donate. It's a couple clicks, and you now quadruple your impact. Thanks a lot, folks.
And joining us now, a voice you haven't heard on the podcast for a little while, Rodlin May Banting. How you doing?
Hello, I'm back on the airwaves.
You're back on the airwaves and the RSS feeds and the earbuds of everyone in Madison. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's chilly out, I'm hunkering down.
Hunkering down, cozying up. So you're here to talk about something you actually witnessed this thing happen, right? You were like there.
Yeah.
Tell us, just tell us a little bit about what happened, first of all.
Yeah, so on November 20th, which was a Wednesday, right before the Thanksgiving holiday, a few friends and I met up for brunch at Willaby's Cafe on Willie Street. Truly, kind of as we sat down, we realized that there was an incident unfolding over at one of the booths next to us. There was an elderly Black man who it seemed to be that he was experiencing some kind of mental health episode. And kind of soon after I had arrived with my friends, the police were called onto the scene. And presumably either the waitstaff had called or another customer had called. And basically what we saw unfold was a pretty violent arrest of this man. We know now that it was Willie Triplett. He is a very familiar face in the Willie Street neighborhood. He's someone who's been around, knows lots of folks in town, is a bit of a handyman, is also a published author, and was, needing support in a way that day that was not provided to him, and instead was faced with pretty brutal police violence.
Now, the reason we're talking about this is that your friend Natasha got video of this and posted it, right? So that's caused some discourse about it, and people wondering about it. And we'll post the video with your story this morning. But when you say, in looking at the video, like, and you talked to Shadara Kilfoy Flores, right, from the
oversight
board. And what was her reaction to the video?
Yeah, she found it pretty, in her words, horrific and traumatic. She also very much was able to see from the footage itself that it was an incident in which the presence of the CARES team would have really been beneficial and something that probably should have been prioritized. And so while she says that there weren't any standard operating procedures that were violated in this interaction between the officer and Triplett, that it really would have been good to have the CARES team there and really be able to de-escalate this situation in a calm way. Triplett was never violent physically with anyone, so it definitely would have been beneficial to have someone kind of talk him down. There had been varying accounts of kind of what he was looking for there. Some folks said that he was looking to use the phone and things like that. So it was obvious that he was just kind of looking for some place to, sit down and kind of recoup. And instead, the outcome was quite different.
Now, the CARES team, let's remind folks, is something that was implemented a couple of years ago. That a lot of communities have kind of started to try this, where it's a emergency response that is not police, right? That is social workers. That is specifically for people in a mental health episode, because what we see across the country is when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So when you're a police officer, everybody is somebody that you're trying to arrest,
right? Suspect.
And even when somebody, right, exactly, everybody you come across as a suspect. So when somebody's in a mental health crisis, maybe being arrested by armed police is not the best outcome. Now, in this case, and I think what Shadara said too was that it seemed to be a proper arrest, right? That it wasn't, there weren't any policies violated or anything like that. But that goes to say even a quote unquote good arrest in the moment can be look violent, right? And it can be pretty upsetting. Now, having covered a few of these, and you haven't really covered one of these before, and you were like asking me a lot of guidance, and you were even like, "Is it ethical for me to cover this because I was there?" To which I said, "Absolutely, yes. Anything you witness is almost even more ethical than whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But having covered like Janelle Laird over in Easttown, and there was a young person, a high school student who had a mental health crisis, and police were called before the CARES team was available. And what you see in those instances was they literally put a bag over this kid's head and punched him in the face with a bag over his head. Yeah. And that was obviously completely inappropriate, and but there were no repercussions. But that's not what we saw here. What we saw is Willie fell. Not super clear whether he was I wouldn't say he was shoved, but he was definitely off balance because the police were trying to handcuff him. So he did fall because of that. And then he was being resistant, as one would, and they were yelling at him to stop resisting, but they didn't hit him or they didn't punch him or anything like that. They did have to force his arms behind his back, and they did search him, which, okay, I'm not sure what they were looking for exactly, but you do search somebody before you arrest them, which is another reason, like maybe CARES team would have been more appropriate in this instance. Right now, what was happening? You kind of said he was just sort of trying to find a place to sit down, but there was more to it than that. He was like saying stuff, and he was like sitting with people who were trying to eat. Right? I mean, he was being disruptive. That's fair to say, right?
Yeah. My friends and I weren't in the diner at that point, but Nathan Prince, who is the owner of Willaby's, who also wasn't there, it should be noted, he had left for the day at that point, but revisiting security footage, he did see that Triplet was using, homophobic, xenophobic language with some of the customers who were present at the diner.
So what's supposed to happen, I guess now, I don't know, when you call 911, you don't, as a person in the world experiencing something like that, you don't have to decide, okay, I'm going to call the CARES team or I'm going to call the police, right? You call 911, there's something happening, we need help. And then the dispatchers are supposed to say, okay, this is a CARES case versus this is a police case, right?
Right.
And for whatever reason, it was police in this instance. Even though we should say this is midday on a Wednesday,
right?
The CARES team is supposed to be available.
The CARES team is available from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and this was smack in the middle of when that service would have been offered.
Right. And they are working on expanding those hours. I think that's in the next year's city budget is to try to expand those hours a little bit, which will be nice.
Right.
Because we've seen that the CARES team has been successful, and this is a kind of an example of when maybe that would have been the more appropriate response. And do we know anything about why or what the decisions were made, or in terms of why it was police and not CARES?
Yeah, it's still unclear at this time who even made the call to 911. It's unclear whether it was a staff member, if it was another customer. In my conversation with Kilfoy Flores, she said, was there enough time to dispatch the CARES team? Was that even kind of happening within this timeline of the arrest? I did see the officer call for backup on his walkie-talkie, and a second officer kind of arrived to the scene to quote-unquote assist with the arrest, but there was no point at which I saw a care team dispatched, a call made for that to happen.
Yeah. So we don't know what the decision tree is. That might be something worth looking into at some point, is what is the decision making process to dispatch a CARES team. And what was the legal ramification? Did Willie get arrested, right, and charged with
yes, he did get arrested and charged. I know he was sorry, let me find that.
I can get this out too.
Yeah, so he was arrested for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest, and he additionally received a citation for trespassing, according to MPD. Okay,
the trespass citation would mean that staff at the restaurant had asked him to leave and he refused to do so, which, but also it's worth noting that there would be no arrest to resist. So like that whole charge, the resisting arrest charge, exists because he was being arrested, which maybe wouldn't have happened had the CARES team come.
Exactly.
Right. They could have provided him the care that he needed, and in a non-escalated, non-violent way, removed him from the situation rather than arresting. And you wonder, could the police have even just removed him without arresting him? Like just got him to just convince him to get up and move on without making an arrest? I don't know. Did they try that? You were there. Did they try to talk him out to leave, or did they just grab him and go?
Yeah, the exchange between the officer and Triplet was maybe about 30 seconds before the officer reached for his handcuffs. It didn't seem like it was a conversation that the officer was, willing to have. I don't know that it was like a conversation that Triplet would have been able to engage with in his agitated state, but it didn't seem like the officer kind of was looking to take the time to kind of have that conversation.
Got it. Well, thanks for being on top of this. And as I said, like, this happened to be, you were there, Natasha was there, Natasha Oladokun, right, is the person who got the video. And so that being on social media is what caused people to be talking about it. And other people actually messaged us on social media saying, this happened, talk to Natasha. So, and I was like, yeah, we are. We're on it. So people were worried about it, thinking about it, talking about it, and so I'm glad you were able to actually look into it and give us some context, and we'll continue to talk and think about. Like I said, when you're a hammer, everything is a nail, and when you're a cop, you're going to start to make an arrest as soon as you encounter somebody who's not complying with your orders or whatever.
Right.
So, but. Again, thanks for the reporting, and that story is up at madison365.org right now. Thanks, Rylan.
Yep, thanks.
And thanks again to Rylan for all that reporting and keeping us up to date.
Oh, sorry, Rob went into his
awesome,
like his NPR voice too. Was he said that right there? Sorry.
This is Rachel Koenig.
I know. Rob just slipped right. He needed that break. Sorry. That was great work, Rodlin.
One last thing before we get to our question is we have a couple more updates on the Charles Myadze situation. He hasn't spoken with us yet, but he did speak with a couple other outlets.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to speak with us.
I don't think he's going to speak with us.
We're lovely.
To remind folks, he is accused by 3 women of domestic violence over the past 20 years. He's also accused by 3 women of sexual harassment just in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
From his seat as an alder, representing District 18 on the north side. A censure resolution has been introduced and now has 14 co-sponsors, including Mayor Satu Rose Conway. That will get a vote on December 10th, this upcoming Tuesday. The other thing that came up is the mayor now has basically asked the council to remove him from all his committee appointments. He's on 5 committees, which is pretty normal. But the mayor has, in her report at this next meeting, she's requesting that he be replaced on all those committees. So they are, the city is, as I mentioned last week, kind of putting together a process how you would remove an alder. Say you had to remove one, nothing to do with Charles, but just say it came up that we had to remove an alder. Well, how would we do that? It doesn't seem like they're going to try to do that at this moment, but they are basically kind of taking away all his committee appointments and making him just one vote on the council.
Sort of like a lame duck.
Yeah,
as best they can.
Now, he hasn't said whether he's going to run again, but he did say to Channel 3 that he intends to finish the term and not heed the requests that he resign.
Not all the alders have been super supportive of either removing him or censuring him. West Side Alder Barbara Harrington McKinney said that he basically needs due process and that she is speaking out, in fact, against the lack thereof, and doing it based on the fact that in her blog post, she said that she didn't speak out when they came for Alder Skidmore, who was a racist West Side Alder with a long history of racist behavior, including on the council when he referred to a community leader as a C word. I don't know where Barbara was during that, but I was covering the meeting that night. I heard it. And she also based that on how she didn't say anything when they came for Alder Halverson, who was removed, or not removed, but resigned after joining the far right white supremacist group, the Oath Keepers, and getting called out on that. And so now, because she did not speak out in defense of those two folks doing white supremacy work, she is deciding that defending this alleged domestic violator is the hill to die on. And I just think that sums up why this is such a difficult thing, and also probably sums up why so few victims of domestic violence come forward, because people defend the accuser more, it seems like, than they're on the side of defending people who have been hurt, people who are colleagues of yours, who are saying they've been hurt by this person. You're defending him over them. It's bizarre.
The whole due process point is weird too, because there was literally a whole investigation where he defended himself, and he was basically exonerated in some sense. That basically the investigative report said, yeah, he did these things, but they don't rise to the level, or they don't meet the criteria for hostile work environment.
Based on their interpretation.
Based on their interpretation of that, of those city policies and state laws. So due process happened, at least in the instances of sexual harassment. The domestic violence piece, due process happened back in 2002 when he pled guilty to false imprisonment. That was due process. The other ones, we did our due diligence, which is not the same as legal due process.
Absolutely.
Right? We reported those things, but he did have a chance to defend himself and chose not to.
Well, and also then suggest, if that's the concern, suggest a due process that could work here, right? Like if you want to see this person go through a due process that maybe isn't legal, like through the legal system, what other due process would you suggest?
That's kind of the whole thing about the new process to remove an alder.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be retroactive, right? There would be no retroactive, like they wouldn't be able to apply it retroactively.
No, but they could start a new process. They could.
Yes,
somebody could bring a complaint and start a hearing process now.
Or also suggest again a way for a due process to happen for this, like rather than just say like, well, there's no due process, so it's not fair.
So I'll be covering that meeting on Tuesday, and we'll report the results and what's said. I will say the resolution did get about 24 people writing in support.
Oh, sure.
Nobody opposed to it.
Yeah,
from the citizens at least.
So we'll see what happens, and we'll follow up with regards to that. Let's move into a question.
Let's wrap it up on a whimsical note.
On a whimsical note, I haven't actually thought of my answer, but I know some of you have.
Okay.
If you could do well in any art medium, which one would it be?
Oh, do well?
Well, anything could I could make stick figures and call that art, right? Like, but it doesn't mean I did it well. Like, just, I did it quickly and maybe scared some children with it because I am not a good artist. But with all these, latest works and opportunities for folks to see some amazing art this month and even like last month, and if you think about like, oh, if I could do art, what would I, if I was good at something with regards to the arts, what would I do?
Who's going first? Omar.
I'll go first.
Omar knew.
Fun fact. Omar used to study software engineering and animation at Bradley University in Peoria before he dropped out of school. I would do animation. I do cool. Still like animation. I just so did not like what I was doing there. I do like claymation. I do have a lot of plasticine clay, and I do make little models, and I have armature wire to actually make the frames. It is a hobby that I've been meaning to get back into. I do have the supplies. I did give.
Could you imagine if we could do like a claymation of some of these some of the fun stories?
We should claymate this podcast recording.
That is so much work.
I know. Every frame would be like a year of work.
That's I would demand freelance a project per hour.
Maybe we could get some grant funding for that.
Yeah.
Please donate to
Yeah.
Madison 365
So that we could do claymation of this recording session.
Or just like a scene from the recording.
Yes,
Yeah.
I gave away all my little claymation figures when I moved to Phoenix because that was not going to survive that drive because
Yeah.
it is very, very hot and my car would have been filled with melted, oily clay. So I do still have all the supplies though.
Nice.
So maybe I will get back into it.
Yeah, that's cool. Rob, I'm gonna go with Rob next.
I think music in some way because I love music and I'm not particularly good at it. I like to. I was a percussionist back in school, like years and years and years ago, and I loved all that. And we have a drum set now, and I like to play along. I put earbuds in and play along, and it's always like. I hope nobody can hear me because I'm not good at it, but I would love to be really good at that. I would love to be able to sing. I can't sing. As a drummer, I cannot carry a tune, but it would be really cool if I could. That would be pretty fantastic.
Even if you just learn to I guess it is still singing, but you could even if you just learn to harmonize, it would, which can be taught.
That would help, yeah. But
Yeah, I think that would
the only
maybe-
karaoke I can do is Violent Femmes because Gordon Gano also can't sing.
And-
So I could sing as good as Gordon Gano can.
Well, that's all you need. Nicholas.
Rob stole mine. If I could sing coupled with the way I can write, I feel like I could have a successful career. But artistically, I would like to be able to do CGI because I'm tired of watching these movies where I'm like, man, come on, this is awful. We can do better.
You just want to improve the movie going experience for other people.
Yeah.
Totally. If they're gonna have a whole movie be CGI,
We need a little bit more subtlety than what they've created.
Mhm.
Just need VFX teams.
yeah. So I would love to do that or sound mixing because the sound in shows and movies right now is struggling.
Yeah, I would be cool with producing. I won't say music because I was a musician for a long time, and I won't say voice because I did sing for a while, so I don't have to do that anymore. But I wish I knew how to. So my brothers and my sister are very great in art. Like they could draw, they could like do stuff like so. Just basic drawing would be cool with me. Like literally, when I said like. There was a running joke that like my stick figures scared children because I was really bad at and I didn't know how to color coordination. Like it was like they were like, that's a monster, put that away kind of thing. I was like, no, it's us. They're like, nope, those are monsters. Please with those nightmares, put them away. So just basic drawing would be cool.
Could you show us an example?
No,
How do you do stick figures?
I don't know, but I was a little kid. I was like 5. And so I thought we were all like, we were in kindergarten and we were drawing stuff and I brought something home. And my little brother was like, like he's screaming. Why are they all look like they're dying? Or I don't remember how I did it, or I don't even remember it. But I just remember my mom like taking the sheet of paper and just sort of like folding it over so nobody had to see it anymore. Because it was just not, it just wasn't my thing.
All the magnets on the fridge.
Oh no.
We're demagnetized.
I know.
Sorry.
I can't put it out.
Weird.
And I was like, oh, I'm not good at this. I get it. And it was fine. And then I thought like, oh, maybe it was just because I was 5, right? Like, and then as I got older, it's like, oh no, I can't draw worth anything. And I remember my sister trying to teach me just to do bubble letters. She's like, this is basic. You can, and she's like, forget it. I can't. And she's the most patient, nicest, kindest person in the world. And she was just like, I can't teach this. Like, this is somebody who has actively tutored folks her entire life. And she was just like, no, you cannot be taught. Just go to bed. I have a headache. So that's it for today, y'all. Now that I've embarrassed myself and shared that I don't know how to draw. We will be back next week with more stories and news for you. Feel free to follow us on Madison365.org, as well as remember to donate to us as well.
Madison365.org/donate. Follow us on Blue Sky.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, follow us on Blue Sky, please, because Twitter
Or Threads.
Threads also works, although Threads still
The
throttles
Insta.
news.
Yeah.
Instagram is good. Facebook less so. Twitter even less so. In terms of not even talking politics, just talking like they suppress news. They don't let you see what we post.
Or even like words that we use.
Yeah, certain
Like,
reviews get like
Yeah.
downvoted or downrated or whatever it is. So follow us on Blue Sky. That seems to be the best place for engagement right now. Have a great weekend.